Warning: extremely disturbing material concerning grooming, CSA, incest, suicide, and sex crimes are discussed. Talia had insisted that Tate attend the RAINN charity event with her. Tate had arrived believing the charity was about pediatric cancer instead. The evening was centered around the prevention and protection of exploited children, with speakers discussing the importance of recognizing abuse, protecting vulnerable children, and giving survivors a voice. Talia believed it was an important cause, and she wanted her son there beside her. She had no idea what she was asking of him. From the moment they walked into the ballroom, Tate looked like he was in physical pain. His shoulders were rigid, his jaw constantly clenched, and his expression remained strained throughout the evening. He barely touched the food placed in front of him and seemed incapable of relaxing. Talia noticed. "Tate, what's wrong with you?" she whispered. "You look miserable." "I'm fine, Mom. You've looked like that all night." Tate forced a faint smile. "It's just a long evening." Talia sighed. "I know you don't enjoy charity events, but this one is important. These children need people willing to stand up for them." "I know." His voice was quiet. Talia couldn't understand why he seemed so affected. As far as she knew, Tate had no personal connection to the subject being discussed. She didn't know about his past. She didn't know the things he had endured, the memories he kept buried, or why certain words could make his entire body tense. So, when another speaker began talking about children being betrayed by adults they trusted, Talia simply reached over and squeezed Tate's arm. "Try to enjoy the evening," she whispered. Tate stared toward the stage. He couldn't. Every word seemed to find some hidden wound. And beside him, his mother sat completely unaware that the charity event she had brought him to was forcing her son to sit face to face with pieces of his own history. Tate kept his expression controlled. Talia never realized that his pain had nothing to do with the event itself. She simply didn't know his past. Andrew had invited Tate to the charity event after their private conversation in Andrew's psychology office. Tate had agreed to come, partly because Andrew had asked and partly because he had promised himself he would make more of an effort to participate in things that mattered. He hadn't asked what the evening's primary subject would be. When Tate arrived, the blue and green ribbons decorating the venue immediately caught his attention. He had expected something focused on children's health, perhaps cancer prevention or support for children with developmental and neurological disabilities. Those were subjects Tate could have handled. Then he saw the program. Tonight's discussion: surviving child abuse and incest. Tate stopped walking. For several seconds, he simply stared at the words. Across the room, Talia was smiling and speaking with several guests, completely unaware of what was happening inside her son's head. She had assumed the evening would be another charitable cause they could support together. Tate's expression changed. The confident posture disappeared, his shoulders stiffened and his face became pale and guarded. Andrew noticed immediately. "You didn't know what tonight was about," he said quietly. Tate shook his head. "No." Andrew studied him for a moment but didn't push. Talia approached them with a smile. "There you are, I was wondering where you two disappeared to." Tate managed to return the smile. "I'm right here." Talia glanced toward the stage. "Isn't this wonderful? I thought tonight was going to be something about pediatric health, but this is an important subject too." Tate's stomach tightened. "Yeah," he said quietly, "very important." Talia had no idea. She didn't know Tate's history. She didn't know why the words child abuse and incest seemed to drain the color from his face. She didn't know that bringing him into a room where survivors were going to talk openly about those subjects was perhaps the last thing he wanted to confront. Andrew did. At least enough to recognize that Tate wasn't simply uncomfortable. He was trying desperately not to fall apart. Andrew leaned toward him. "You don't have to stay if this becomes too much." Tate stared toward the stage. "No." Andrew raised an eyebrow. Tate swallowed. "I said I'd come." And that was Tate's answer. He would stay. Even if every minute of the evening forced him closer to memories he had spent years trying not to remember. Tate didn't want to be there. The moment he understood what the evening was actually about, he felt uncomfortable, exposed, and deeply unsettled. Nobody at the event knew what he had survived. As far as everyone else was concerned, he was simply another wealthy donor attending a charity event. Only Andrew knew that Tate was a survivor. And even though nobody had meant to hurt him, Tate couldn't shake the feeling that he had been tricked. Andrew had told him it was a RAINN charity event. Tate had agreed without asking questions. He hadn't known what RAINN was, and he certainly hadn't realized that the evening would focus on surviving child abuse and incest. Now he sat rigidly in his chair, staring toward the stage. His discomfort slowly turned into anger. He glanced at Andrew. "You knew." Andrew's expression changed. "I knew what the event was about." "You knew I didn't." "I didn't realize you didn't know." Tate looked away, his jaw tightening. "That would have been useful information." Andrew understood immediately that Tate wasn't accusing him of deliberately hurting him. Tate was reacting to the feeling of having walked unknowingly into a room where the most painful parts of his past were about to become the evening's subject. "I wasn't trying to ambush you," Andrew said quietly. "I know." But Tate still felt exposed. Every mention of children being exploited, adults abusing positions of trust, and survivors learning to live after abuse seemed to land somewhere painfully close to home. Around him, people listened respectfully, some nodded, others wiped away tears. Nobody was looking at Tate. Yet Tate felt as though everyone could see straight through him. That was the worst part. Nobody knew. Nobody except Andrew. Tate lowered his eyes and silently reminded himself that he had nothing to be ashamed of. But knowing that intellectually didn't make the shame disappear. Andrew leaned closer. "If you need to leave, we'll leave." Tate hesitated. Then he whispered, "I don't want anyone to know why." "They won't." Tate nodded, still staring at the stage. He had come expecting a charity event. Instead, he'd walked into a room filled with the language of the life he'd spent years trying to survive. And for the rest of the evening, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been brought there without being given the one piece of information he needed most. Susie, Anna, Jack, Bree, Mark, and Riley were all there that evening, helping with the charity work and volunteering wherever they were needed. They moved through the crowded venue with clipboards, donation materials, and stacks of informational pamphlets. Tate noticed them almost immediately. Then Riley saw him. For one brief second, Riley's eyes met Tate's. Riley's expression changed as though he'd smelled something unpleasant. Without saying a word, he turned his back and walked away. Tate's face hardened. He had already felt uncomfortable, exposed, and trapped by the subject of the evening. Now Riley's reaction added another layer of humiliation. And Noah wasn't there. Tate had learned that Noah knew he was going to attend. Rather than coming, Noah had made himself scarce. That hurt. More than Tate wanted to admit. Tate could tolerate strangers ignoring him. He could tolerate awkward conversations. But when someone he cared about deliberately avoided him, it felt personal. And Tate had always had a particular weakness for taking hurt and turning it into retaliation. Nobody hurt Tate without eventually discovering that Tate could be remarkably petty. Before he could decide exactly what form that retaliation would take, one of his friends approached him. The man looked genuinely confused. "Tate, what are you doing here?" Tate stared at him. "What does it look like I'm doing? I just didn't expect you at an event like this." Tate gave him a thin smile. Apparently neither did anyone else. His friend frowned, sensing the sharpness in his voice. Tate looked across the room toward Riley, who was deliberately keeping his back turned. Then he glanced toward the empty space where Noah should have been. For once, Tate didn't make a scene. He simply stood there, surrounded by people who were supposedly his friends, feeling more alone than he had since walking through the doors. Andrew, watching from across the room, recognized the expression immediately. Tate wasn't angry because he didn't care. He was angry because he cared far too much. Tate was so uncomfortable that he decided the only way he could survive the evening was to turn everything into a joke. He wandered over to where Talia and Anna were organizing items for the silent auction. "This is where all the weirdos and webfooters in LA are tonight," Tate muttered. Talia looked up from the auction sheets. "What are you talking about?" Tate shrugged, forcing a crooked smile. "You know, the people this event is actually about." Talia's expression immediately changed. Tate. Anna crossed her arms. Are you seriously making jokes about survivors? Tate's smile faltered. Maybe. That isn't funny, Anna said. Talia looked at Tate with genuine disgust. Tate, don't call survivors weirdos. These are people who never chose for any of these horrible things to happen to them. They deserve kindness, empathy, and compassion. Tate gave a short, humorless laugh. As long as they don't touch me, I'll be fine. Tate. I wouldn't date or hook up with any of these people if you paid me, he continued, his sarcasm becoming sharper. Half the people here probably had families that... Stop. Talia's voice was firm enough to silence him. Tate scowled and looked around the room. You probably expect me to write some enormous check so everyone here can feel better about themselves. Talia stared at him. No, I expect you to behave like a decent human being. Tate's expression hardened, then he scowled like a toddler. Are there any cute blonde boys around here? For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Talia knew something was wrong. She could see it in the tension in his shoulders and the way he kept looking toward the exit. Tate was clearly uncomfortable with the subject of the evening, and she was beginning to realize that his cruel jokes were a defense mechanism. But understanding why he was doing it didn't make the behavior acceptable. You're uncomfortable, Talia said quietly. I can see that, but being uncomfortable doesn't give you permission to demean people who have already suffered. Tate looked away. I know. And if you can't handle being here, you can leave. That caught him off guard. Tate glanced at her. You'd let me. Of course I would. His expression briefly softened before the familiar mask returned. Maybe I'll stay. Talia sighed. Then stay, but show these people the respect they deserve. Tate didn't answer. He simply looked toward the stage again, his face tightening. Talia still didn't know what was really happening inside her son. She didn't know that his cruelty wasn't coming from hatred of the survivors. It was coming from his desperate need to distance himself from something he couldn't bear to acknowledge about his own past. A beautiful woman in her early 20s caught Tate's attention from across the room. She smiled at him, then gave him a playful wink before making her way over. Hi, she said, you look like you could use an escape from this place. Tate managed a polite smile. Maybe. She leaned closer, we could leave together. Tate immediately shook his head. No. She looked surprised, no. Not tonight. Tate glanced toward the stage, where another speaker was discussing the experiences of survivors. The entire evening had left him feeling raw and uncomfortable. The last thing he wanted was to leave the event with someone, especially when he couldn't stop thinking about the subject being discussed. I'm not taking anyone home tonight, he said quietly. She nodded, recognizing that he was serious. Okay, I understand. Thank you. She gave him one last smile before walking away. Tate watched her disappear into the crowd. For once, he wasn't interested in flirting, drinking, or escaping with somebody. He just wanted the evening to end. Before Tate could catch his breath, he heard the last voice in the world he wanted to hear again. Hey fuckboy, how's your normal everyday life? Tate froze. His head snapped toward the voice. Wayne Vaughn stood several feet away, wearing a smug smile that made Tate's stomach turn. Wayne looked around the room as though he found the entire event amusing. Look at all the freaks around here, Wayne said. You think all these people hump their daddies? Tate's hands curled into fists. He wanted nothing more than to put Wayne through the nearest wall. The irony was almost unbearable. Tate had spent the entire evening feeling exposed and trapped, surrounded by conversations about abuse and survival. Now the one person he least wanted anywhere near him had appeared in the middle of it. Wayne seemed to be enjoying every second. Then Andrew noticed him. His expression changed immediately. He recognized Wayne, and more importantly, he recognized the effect Wayne's presence was having on Tate. Andrew walked over and positioned himself beside Tate. Wayne. Wayne smiled. Doctor. Andrew's eyes narrowed. Tate stared at Wayne, barely containing his anger. Andrew didn't take his eyes off Wayne. You need to leave Tate alone. Wayne chuckled as though the confrontation amused him. But Andrew could see what Tate couldn't hide, beneath the anger was fear. Wayne wasn't merely an unpleasant acquaintance. He was Tate's blackmailer. And he had just walked into a room where Tate was already struggling to keep himself together. Wayne looked around the room with a mocking smile. "So, this is where everyone ends up on a Saturday night," he said. "People with all kinds of sexual kinks, society taboos, and familial Oedipal problems pretending they're here to help one another." Tate's jaw tightened. Wayne nudged him with his elbow. "Have you seen anyone you recognize yet? Anyone from your past you fucked and now feel regret touching a freak?" Tate said nothing. Wayne laughed under his breath. "I might actually buy something from the auction. It's a good cause, right? Then maybe I'll choose someone here who looks like they could use a little attention and make them feel like they're worth something." Andrew's expression hardened. Wayne continued, enjoying Tate's discomfort. "After everything they've survived, maybe they deserve a reward." Tate finally turned toward him. "Don't." Wayne smiled. "What, you don't think they deserve one?" Tate's hands curled into fists. "You don't get to use what happened to people as entertainment." For the first time, Wayne's smile faltered. Andrew stepped closer to Tate. "That's enough, Wayne." Wayne glanced between them, still amused, but Tate could feel the anger building inside him. The entire evening had already become unbearable. Now Wayne was deliberately turning other people's suffering into a joke, and Tate couldn't stand it. "How many of these people here tonight do you think have webbed feet? Maybe they're a little bit shorter than everyone else, or maybe," Wayne said, smiling as though he were enjoying every insult, "they're sterile. They can't have kids because their parents just couldn't be siblings and decided they wanted to be married." Tate was glaring at Wayne, his expression becoming colder with every word. "I think I'm going to offer some emotional and sexual support to these pathetic jailbait people. They definitely need it, whatever it takes, so they don't remember that they're pathetic, used up, and that nobody wants to shake hands with them because nobody wants to think about daddies." "You have a good evening, Wayne," Tate cut in sharply. Wayne laughed. "You tell that blonde cunt you sleep with that Tate Blue better be taking good care of him. If not, Noah might meet or turn towards one of these people." Wayne paused, his grin widening. "Oh wait." He looked directly at Tate. "He already has with you." Wayne smirked, clearly pleased with himself, then turned and walked away. Tate remained frozen for a moment, his fists clenched at his sides. His face had gone completely expressionless. Andrew, standing nearby, had heard every word. He watched Wayne disappear into the crowd before looking back at Tate. Tate didn't say anything. He simply stared after him, his anger barely containing everything Wayne had managed to stir up inside him. Tate's anger surged so violently that for a fleeting moment he imagined wrapping his fingers around Wayne's throat and squeezing until that little snake finally stopped talking. Wayne always had to have the last word, always had to find one more way to twist the knife. And what made it worse was the money. Tate had paid Wayne enough to afford 7 mansions, and somehow Wayne still acted as though Tate owed him something. Tate wanted to get his money's worth just once. His mind even produced another childish, vindictive fantasy. If only he had a laxative, he could slip into Wayne's drink and let Wayne spend the rest of the evening regretting every sip. Tate almost laughed at the thought. It was only a fantasy. He wasn't going to hurt Wayne. He wasn't going to poison him, attack him, or put his hands around his throat. But after everything Wayne had done, profiting from a child survivor's pain and then using that pain to humiliate him, Tate couldn't help thinking that Wayne deserved some discomfort of his own. Andrew watched Tate carefully. "You're thinking about doing something stupid, aren't you?" Tate looked at him. "No." Andrew raised an eyebrow. Tate sighed. "Fine, I'm thinking about it, I'm not going to do it." That distinction matters. Tate glanced toward the crowd where Wayne had disappeared. "Believe me, Andrew, I know." Andrew set his glass down and walked toward the stage. The room gradually quieted as he took the microphone. "Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Andrew Lott, one of the charity organizers and an avid supporter of the Pediatric RAINN Foundation. I've met most of you at our clinic when it opened 2 years ago, and I'm glad that all of you are still achieving and pursuing amazing mental health and a better path toward your goals in the future. We're not defined by what happens to us when we were too small to prevent it. What matters is using our past to inspire other people to rise above theirs. Before we get started on the silent auctions and the additional speeches, I was asked to share my past. If one person can have the courage to speak out against abuse or to heal from past trauma, then sharing my story and my past is worth it. The family, at least the surrogate family I met when I was in college, doesn't know the story, but most of you do. Andrew paused. The room was completely silent. Tate looked up at him from his seat. For the first time that evening, Tate wasn't thinking about Wayne. He wasn't thinking about Riley turning his back on him or Noah staying away. He was listening to Andrew. And somehow, watching Andrew stand on that stage and willingly expose something painful about himself made Tate feel slightly less alone. Andrew took a breath before continuing. This isn't a story I'm telling because I want sympathy. I'm telling it because silence can make survivors believe they're alone. Sometimes, telling the truth is the first step toward taking your life back. Tate lowered his eyes. Those words landed harder than he expected. For once, he didn't make a joke. Andrew swallowed and then began his story. I was born in 1968 in Philadelphia to Harold Green and Sarah Green. They were not married, and throughout the years I received a lot of religious hate and judgment because of this fact. My mother had mental issues. She was never diagnosed, but with the information I have from her journal and remembering the behavior I saw, she probably had schizophrenia when I was a young boy, barely in first grade. My mother killed herself. She had me when she was 15, and I was sent to live with my grandfather, who also resided in Philadelphia. He and my mother were very close. I remember him. He was kind for a while, at least. Andrew paused, looking down at his hands before continuing. I was very young and I didn't understand everything that was happening around me. I remember my grandfather as someone who initially made me feel safe. When you're a child, you trust the adults who are supposed to protect you. You don't question their intentions because you don't have the life experience to recognize when something isn't right. I believed that my grandfather loved me and that I was finally somewhere I could be protected after losing my mother. He took a slow breath before looking back toward the audience. But sometimes the people we trust the most are the people who can hurt us the most. I didn't understand that when I was a little boy. I understand it now. And that is why I'm telling you this story tonight. Not because I want anyone's pity, but because survivors deserve to know that what happened to them wasn't their fault, and that surviving what someone else did to you doesn't have to define the rest of your life. Andrew swallowed hard before continuing. My mother had left me in my grandfather's care, and until my 7th birthday my grandfather molested me every night for 1 year until a housekeeper and a neighbor saw something that made them uncomfortable. They called the authorities and I was removed from the home. When I had moved into my grandfather's house, he had given me a box of my mother's things. In it was one of her journals. When I was old enough to read it, while I was in foster care, my mother's journal contained information that changed my life. Andrew paused, his voice quieter. Susan Green was the daughter of Harold, not his wife. Harold Green had molested his own daughter. My mother was my sister, my mother, and my surrogate grandmother. After she had me, my mother couldn't handle the fact that she believed she had brought shame on the family, even though now I know the shame belonged to my grandfather. Harold had molested my sister, who later became my mother, for 10 years before she had me when she was 15. Harold wasn't just my grandfather, he was also my father. The room remained completely silent. Andrew took a breath before continuing. The Green family practiced incest, and I later testified against my grandfather and father, who were the same person. He's in prison now. He won't get out until he's 75 years old, and by then I hope he's dead. I only visited my grandfather once in prison when I was 18. I never went back. I had spent my childhood believing I was the problem, believing my family had been ruined by my existence. It took years for me to understand the truth. I wasn't the shame. I was the child who deserved to be protected. Andrew swallowed and continued, his voice steady but visibly strained. After I testified about what my grandfather had done to me, and after the journal I had read was confirmed to be my mother's handwriting, Harold was convicted of involuntary manslaughter for his role in Susan's death. She had taken her own life after years of shame, guilt, and hatred toward her own past. My mother suffered for many years before she couldn't take it anymore. After the conviction, Harold was also convicted of harming his own daughter for 10 years, as well as the molestation he did to me for a year after my mother killed herself. He was sentenced to 65 years in prison, and he will not be eligible for parole until he's almost 80. I hope by that time he's dead, because I do not want to live in Los Angeles or Philadelphia where he would be free. I don't say that because I want to spend the rest of my life being afraid of him. I say it because I spent enough of my childhood having my safety taken away from me. I don't ever want that man to have the opportunity to take it away again. His sentence didn't give me my childhood back, it didn't bring my mother back, but it did mean that, for once, the law acknowledged what he had done, and that mattered. I can live my life now knowing that he is behind bars while I am standing here telling my story. He doesn't get to decide what happens to me anymore. My family had money and he, my father, was able to use that money to cover up his disgusting behavior for years. When I visited my grandfather once, he blamed my mother. He said she had tempted him and claimed that when she was 5 years old he couldn't resist. I'm not proud to say that I punched him, but the guards didn't say anything about it. He writes me letters sometimes, but I've never opened them. I never wanted to. I have shared some of the letters with survivors though. My personal assistant read them first to make sure they were appropriate for patients to read. I've been told that in some of them my father and grandfather apologized, while other times he blamed my mother. I don't need to read them to know that none of those words can change what happened. An apology doesn't give me back my childhood, and an excuse doesn't erase what he did. Andrew looked across the room, his expression becoming firmer. I'm not my past, and I'm not going to allow my father to control the quality of life I have. This monster took my sister and my mother from me. He also took my father and my grandfather. My family is dead. I had a few other relatives, but they refused to get involved. They wanted nothing to do with that disgusting branch of their family. Ironically, most of them are Christians. I'm an atheist myself because I refuse to be part of a group of people that views surviving horrific conditions as a shame. I don't believe survivors should carry the shame of what someone else chose to do to them. The shame belongs to the person who caused the harm, never the person who survived it. Andrew continued, his voice quieter but steady. I was adopted by the Lott family, who were visiting the Philadelphia area in 1976 when I was 8 years old. This was 1 year after my father had been convicted and sent to prison. I had been fostered by 3 families before I met the Lotts, but every time someone blackmailed my foster family for money because of my past and the shame that society attached to it. I was returned to the orphanage many times because no parent wanted the scandal. But when the Lotts took me home in Philadelphia, they were blackmailed too, and each time the person involved was arrested and convicted. They changed my name not because they wanted to hide my past or because they thought it was shameful or because they blamed me. My foster family wanted me to have a chance at a decent life. I grew up during decades when victims were silenced, and they didn't want me to be labeled as a young man who was a victim because kids my age could be very cruel. I was born with the name Anthony Marlowe Lee Green. I was adopted by the Strong family 6 months after I testified in court, but they returned me because of the scandal. I don't blame them for realizing they weren't a perfect fit. Andrew paused, looking across the room. I changed my name from Anthony to Andrew because I wanted a different life. Not because I was ashamed of the boy Anthony had been, but because I wanted to become the person Anthony deserved to become. I wanted a name that wasn't connected to the man who hurt my family or to the shame other people had placed on me. Anthony survived. Andrew got to build a life. Regardless of your past, Andrew said, every survivor deserves compassion, kindness, and access to resources to protect their mental health and to pursue a future that their abusers should have never been involved with. I've known many children whose mothers did not protect them from their fathers, uncles, or brothers, and this is unfortunately very common. My mother should not have killed herself. She shouldn't have been put in that position. She should not have left me with a man who had hurt her for years, but with her mental disorder and the trauma she was managing, she didn't know any other way but to end her life. And that's why every day I try to offer patients and people I meet the resources so their life doesn't have to end in a tragic way. Andrew smiled. Don't ever let abusers win. Being a survivor is hard, uncomfortable, and sad, but it can also be a wonderful, beautiful thing. Being a survivor is like having a family, an army of people who can work together, fight, and help others stand up against adversity and predation. You don't have to carry what happened to you alone. You don't have to spend the rest of your life believing that your past has the final word. I've personally been involved in getting 5 legislative bills passed in the California legislature for stiffer penalties against child molesters, assisting sex offender registries, and educating young children in junior high and elementary school on how to spot the warning signs for grooming and child abuse. If we can prevent it before it even happens, that's one child who doesn't have to grow up wondering if they're a sin. That's one child who gets to grow up knowing the truth. They are not the shame. They are not the crime. They are a child who deserves to be protected. Andrew sniffled and looked out over the audience. I may be the product of the unnatural relationship between my sister and my father, but it doesn't define who I am. It defines who Harold was, not me. There are some very sick individuals in Los Angeles right now. There's probably a dozen children being harmed by rich men, by poor women, and by people that the state of California believes are protecting their children while they're actively harming them. Anyone who's the product of incest, or is the victim of incest, or even if it wasn't between a family member and yourself, It could have been a teacher, a coach, a music minister, a pastor, a mentor, or maybe it was even your own adult child. Nobody deserves to be hunted. People should be able to sleep in their own beds without fear of being targeted. Children should be able to wear whatever they want without being called jailbait. Regardless of what you wear, where you are, what you say, or what everyone else in California tells you, you didn't deserve it. You're not a sin for existing or an abhorrent stain on your family name. There wasn't anything you could do to prevent it, and you deserve to heal. Andrew swallowed, then went on with his speech. When I was growing up, Andrew said, my mother, the wonderful warm lady who adopted me, introduced me to one of the interests I still have to this day, movies. My favorite movie is Chinatown. For those who haven't seen it, there's a character in the movie whose daughter is being hunted by the police for information. Near the end of the movie, the detective discovers that the woman he has suspicions about had an unfortunate relationship with her own father involving her own sister and her daughter. I love the movie because it humanizes experiences I've lived through. I learned that there's a proper time and place to discuss my past, and that the average conversation isn't the proper place. When we talk about our trauma, we need to do it in a responsible manner, especially by making it age-appropriate for the audience. There are no young children here tonight because we're talking about very adult behavior. We do have a few teenagers who are survivors, and I'm glad that they came. We need to teach our children that they are in danger, but we need to do it responsibly. 1 out of 4 young girls is targeted by usually heterosexual male predators, and approximately 1 out of 7 boys is targeted by monsters. But these monsters don't look creepy like what you'd see in a movie. They look like our fathers, brothers, uncles, even our grandfathers. And yes, you are most likely to be harmed by someone in your family, but you can also be harmed by authority figures, people your family trusts. I love the movie Chinatown because not only does it reflect the past I have, it's a reminder that even though my life felt like an anomaly that only happened to me, it happens to a lot of people. Finding out my mother was also my sister, and that my grandfather was also my father is a hard pill to swallow for any child. It's still hard to talk about, and I've received a lot of judgment from religious and traditional communities for something I had no control over. It's not our shame, it's not our fault. The people who took advantage of the privilege and responsibility of being caregivers are at fault, and it's their shame. Only 1 out of 8 assaults are even reported. For every survivor who doesn't speak up, other victims might be impacted because the person responsible isn't stopped. I do understand why survivors don't speak out. Our society does not always protect them or make them feel safe. I was traumatized even more by telling strangers about what I had endured as a child than I was by the actual assault. We need to change this. Telling people and protecting yourself should not be traumatic or even worse than the actual incident. There are many people who went through the process of collecting DNA swabs and having kits done, and those kits are still sitting in refrigerators somewhere, not being tested. Convictions don't happen when you don't test evidence. In some states, these evidence kits are being destroyed. They should never be destroyed simply because processing them is inconvenient. We should never send the message to survivors that evidence of their crime isn't important enough to preserve. Many survivors already feel like they are being thrown away. We should never make them feel like the evidence that proves what happened to them isn't important. A few people clapped while Andrew went on with his speech. I want to thank Dr. Tamara Michaels for finding me when I was a young child, unsure if I wanted to testify against my father and grandfather for his crimes. She convinced me that it was in my best interest to testify so no other child would ever come in contact with Harold Green, and no one would be a victim of him anymore. The child I was and the future man I grew into deserved justice, even if it was inconvenient for the judgmental family members I had left, even if it tore my family apart. My other family enabled and silenced the scandal, but I deserved justice. I deserved to have someone stand up for me when I was too young to understand how important my testimony could be. Dr. Michaels is still helping children, and she's actually standing over there by the water fountain. She's been working for the last 6 hours to make this event a success. Johns Hopkins is lucky to have her, and she comes to LA all the time to minister to children who have complications due to mental disorders or who find out that they're victims of CSA. Andrew looked toward Dr. Michaels. Dr. Michaels, thank you. You didn't just help a frightened little boy testify. You helped him believe that his life was worth fighting for. You helped make sure that the child I was could grow into the man standing here tonight. The audience turned toward the water fountain as Dr. Michaels realized that everyone was looking at her. She smiled through tears as the room erupted into applause. The silent auction we're having tonight is raising money for kids who are trying to be placed in good homes after being removed through CPS from their families. If you want to become a foster parent, there are forms by the blue table by the door. There are a few social workers here who can talk you through the process and the forms on how to help children. If foster care isn't your passion, you can always sign up for programs where you can donate to help orphanages and CPS centers be funded. Talia Blue, the lady wearing the beautiful purple dress standing next to me, I think we should have a round of applause for her and the 3 socialites who helped with the event. Half of the people here are survivors. Some of you don't even know you are a survivor because you expect abuse to look a certain way. Andrew wiped beneath one eye and continued. We have free counseling at the clinic on Thursday between 6 and 7 if you want to stop by because you think you know someone who's being hurt. Maybe you have questions about your own childhood because you think something was wrong. You can always stop by, and if you can't get there, my business card has a program that can help shuttle people in by bus. If you urgently know that something's wrong, please always call the police. It's better to make a mistake and overreact than to wonder 20 years later if you should have done more. Thank you for your time. For several seconds, the room remained completely silent. Then someone began applauding. Another person joined. Within moments, the entire room erupted into applause. Andrew stood quietly at the podium, visibly emotional. Talia applauded beside him. Across the room, Tate didn't move. He simply stared at Andrew. For the first time that night, Tate wasn't embarrassed to be there. He was proud of Andrew. After the event was over, Andrew quietly approached Tate. The room was beginning to empty, volunteers were gathering the remaining auction materials, and conversations had become softer. Andrew held out a small envelope. I wanted you to have these. Tate looked at him suspiciously before taking it. 2 ribbons, Andrew explained. A green one and a blue one. I know you want to keep your past a secret so you don't have to display them. I just want you to know you're not invisible. Tate looked down at the envelope. Andrew lowered his voice so nobody else could hear. Your friends care about you. Even your mother cares about you. She doesn't know what you're carrying, but that doesn't mean she doesn't care. If nobody you knew cared, they wouldn't have spent their evening helping with this event. They support you, even if they don't know you need the support. Tate swallowed. There's something else in there, Andrew continued. A card from the RAINN Foundation. I thought you could keep it in your safe or wherever you want to keep it, someplace private where nobody will see it. Tate opened the envelope just enough to glimpse the ribbons. For once, he didn't make a joke. Andrew studied him carefully. I hope someday you won't be silent anymore. Tate looked up. Andrew's voice softened. Your abusers are dead, Tate. They can't hurt you anymore. You don't have to keep living like you're still trapped in the life they created for you. Tate looked back down at the envelope. The words didn't magically fix anything. But for the first time that night, Tate didn't feel completely alone. He quietly closed his fingers around the envelope. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew nodded. You're welcome. 2 weeks later, Noah's house felt different from what it used to. Not louder, just fuller. Green Rambler-style walls that usually held silence were now interrupted by paper swatches, fabric samples, half-folded seating charts, and the constant soft rhythm of conversation that never quite stopped long enough to become stillness. Noah sat on the couch with a binder open on his knee, though he hadn't turned a page in a while. Susie was next to him, legs tucked under herself, flipping through a stack of printed color palettes like she had been born knowing how to organize other people's milestones. Okay, she said, tapping one page, this shade is too ivory, it's giving hospital hallway lighting. Noah huffed a small laugh despite himself. You've been in too many hospitals lately, apparently. Susie shot him a look, not the point. Across the room, Bree and Anna were spread out on the floor, surrounded by ribbons and invitation mock-ups, debating tassels like it was a matter of national importance. I'm telling you, Bree said, holding up 2 options, this one looks more expensive. It looks more like a golden retriever collar, Anna shot back. Bree gasped, that is not an insult. It is absolutely an insult. Susie noticed. She always noticed. She nudged his shoulder lightly. Hey. Noah blinked back. Yeah. You're somewhere else, she said gently, not accusing. Noah gave a small shrug that didn't commit to anything, just thinking. Susie leaned back against the couch. About the seating chart or about the existential weight of marrying a man who insists on signature cocktails? A faint smile flickered across Noah's mouth. Both, probably. That earned a soft laugh from her. For a moment, the room settled into something almost normal again, paper rustling, distant debate about font choices, someone saying we are not doing cursive like it was a constitutional issue. But then Susie's voice shifted slightly. More careful. Less playful. So, she said like she was stepping around something fragile, you've been quiet about everything else. Noah's fingers paused on the edge of the binder. He didn't ask what she meant. He already knew. Susie watched him for a second longer, then softened her tone again. I'm not asking for drama, she added quickly, I just want to know you're okay. Noah exhaled slowly. I'm fine, he said automatically. Susie raised an eyebrow. He corrected himself more quietly, I'm functioning. From the floor, Bree glanced up. Functioning is not a wedding word. Anna nodded, we need a stronger emotional verb. Noah let out a breath that almost became a laugh but didn't fully make it. Susie nudged him again, gentler this time. You don't have to carry everything in a way that looks neat, she said. Noah looked at her then. Something in his expression flickered, like he was deciding whether to say something and discarding it before it formed. Instead, he just nodded once. I know, he said. A beat passed. Outside, the light shifted slightly through the window, moving across the room like time continuing whether anyone was ready or not. And inside the house, the conversation carried on, tassels, seating charts, laughter that tried its best to stay in the present. Susie's phone rang again just as she was leaning over the coffee table, pretending to study a seating chart she hadn't actually been reading for the last 10 minutes. The sound cut clean through the room. Everyone noticed it at once. But only Susie moved first. She reached for it quickly, too quickly, like she'd been waiting for it and hopping at the same time that it wouldn't come. Hello, she answered, already turning slightly away from Noah as if that could make the conversation less audible. Noah watched her face the moment she spoke. It changed immediately. Not dramatically. Not exaggerated. Just a small tightening around her eyes, a subtle pull at the corners of her mouth, like someone had said something she wasn't prepared to carry in front of other people. Noah's attention sharpened. Susie turned her back a little more, stepping closer to the kitchen counter. Hi, she said into the phone, voice too controlled. This is not a good time, I'm with friends, we're planning something. A pause. Noah could hear nothing from the other end, but he could hear Susie's tone shift, polite on the surface, strained underneath it. Yeah, sure, she continued, glancing back briefly toward the living room. Can you call back in a few hours? Another pause. Her smile appeared then. It didn't reach her eyes. It looked like something she was using to hold herself together. Yes, she said, voice tightening just slightly. I will decide about the cupcakes later. That made Bree pause mid-whisper to Anna. Cupcakes wasn't a word that usually carried that kind of expression. Susie gave a short, clipped laugh, too light, too fast. Okay, great, she said, bye. She ended the call. And the silence after it felt immediate. Susie stood there for a second, phone still in her hand, staring at it like it might ring again if she blinked wrong. Then she placed it face down on the counter. Carefully. Deliberately. Noah was already watching her. Not relaxed anymore. Not distracted by wedding planning. Fully locked in. Who was that? He asked. Susie didn't turn around right away. When she did, her expression had already shifted into something guarded. Nobody, she said quickly. That was the wrong answer. Noah's eyes narrowed slightly. That's not true. Susie exhaled through her nose, a small sign of frustration breaking through the control. It was just a call, she said. It's not important. Noah stepped forward a little. You don't make that face for someone who's not important. Susie gave him a look, part warning, part pleading. Noah, she said softer now, drop it. That only made him more still. More focused. I saw you, he said. Susie blinked once. Saw me what? I saw your face, he replied. Before you even spoke, you looked like something happened. Susie shook her head slightly. Nothing happened. Noah let out a short breath, almost disbelieving. So what, you just randomly tense up, barely talk, and whisper about cupcakes like you're negotiating a hostage situation for fun? From the floor, Bree shifted uncomfortably. Anna murmured, we might be witnessing a pre-wedding stress spiral. Bree whispered back, or a crisis. Susie heard them but didn't respond. Her focus stayed on Noah. Bree's voice cut through the tension too brightly, too normal for the moment. The cake testing is here, she announced, holding up a cake like it could reset the entire atmosphere of the room. For a second it almost worked. Almost. Noah was still looking at Susie. Not moving, not blinking much, just holding her in place with attention that had stopped being casual a while ago. Susie held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds longer than she could maintain the lie. Then she exhaled sharply, like something inside her finally gave up on staying contained. "All right," she said. Her voice came out tighter than she intended. "All right, fine," it was Tate. The room changed instantly. Even Bree, mid-motion, slowed as she'd accidentally stepped into a different conversation than the one she was prepared for. Susie raised a hand quickly, as if trying to contain what she'd just released. "I didn't want to say it," she added immediately, "because I knew exactly what would happen, and I don't want this turning into whatever this is in the middle of wedding planning." Noah didn't respond right away. His face didn't explode into emotion. It went very still. Which for him was worse. Susie rushed to fill the silence. "It was a call from the clinic," she said quickly. "That's it, they were checking in, that's all I know. I didn't ask for details because I don't want details, I don't want to be involved in it, I don't want it in this room." Bree, who had been holding the cake too close to the coffee table, shifted awkwardly and set it down a little too hard. A slice leaned slightly off balance. "Oh my God," Bree muttered under her breath, "that feels symbolic." Anna gave her a look that said not now. Susie dragged a hand through her hair, visibly frustrated now, not at Noah exactly, but at the situation she felt cornered by. "I am trying to keep today normal," she said, "just one day without everything becoming about him." The word him hung there. Noah finally spoke, quiet but controlled. "You mean Tate?" Susie hesitated for half a beat too long. Which confirmed it. She sighed again, sharper this time. "Yes," she said, "Tate. I don't want to say anything because it turns this entire cake testing day into something heavy and awkward and—" She gestured vaguely at the room. "This." Noah's expression shifted slightly. Not anger yet. More like something collapsing inward. Susie continued, pushing through it now. "He's your ex-buddy, Noah. I don't want to talk about your ex at your wedding planning party." That landed in the room like a correction no one fully agreed with, but no one could immediately argue against. From the floor, Bree muttered quietly, "We are officially past cupcake energy." Anna nodded once, "We are in emotional litigation territory." Susie, still focused on Noah, softened her voice. "I'm sorry," she said, "but it wasn't fully an apology, it was more like damage control. I don't want this to take over everything again." Noah let out a slow breath. When he spoke, it was quieter than before. "He's not my ex," he said. Susie frowned. "Noah." "No," he interrupted gently, not sharp, just firm, "don't do that." Silence again. The room didn't move. Even the idea of wedding planning seemed to step back and wait. Noah ran a hand over his face once, then looked back at Susie. "What did they say?" he asked. Susie shook her head, "Not much, just that he's stable, that's all I know." Noah nodded slowly, like he was absorbing something that didn't have edges yet. Then quietly, "And you answered the phone because—" Susie exhaled. "Because I didn't know it would be about him," she said. "And because I didn't think you needed to hear it in real time while we're sitting here talking about napkin folds and cake tiers." Noah gave a small, humorless breath. "Yeah," he said softly, "that would have been terrible hearing things." Susie's face tightened at that. "Noah," she warned gently. But he wasn't escalating. He was just recalibrating. The room stayed suspended in it. None of Noah's friends, Susie, Anna, Bree, Mark, or Jack, had any real idea what Tate's relationship with Noah was at that point. From the outside, it was impossible to follow. One week, Tate and Noah were trying to be buddies, then they weren't speaking, then they seemed to be trying to become friends again, only for everything to stall. Nobody could figure out where they stood. There was one thing everyone had noticed, though. Whenever Tate's name came up around Noah, Noah went quiet. His entire demeanor changed, as though someone had suddenly closed a door inside him. And whenever Noah's name came up around Tate, Tate did exactly the same thing. He clammed up. Neither of them explained themselves. Neither offered their friends an answer. So everyone was left wondering what had happened between them, and whether Tate and Noah even knew what they were to each other anymore. Years earlier, Tate had moved out of the house and, from Noah's perspective, had simply abandoned him. After leaving, Tate eventually moved on with his life and became engaged to Chloe. When he married her 2.5 years ago, everyone assumed that chapter of his life had finally closed. For nearly 10 years, people had watched Tate and Noah circle each other, getting close, pulling apart, trying to be buddies, and then retreating from one another again. Eventually, everyone who had once shipped them together gave up. Tate was married now. As far as everyone knew, he was happily married to Chloe. Nobody suspected that there was anything complicated beneath the surface because Tate had never really told anyone much about his marriage. The old jokes about Tate and Noah had disappeared. The betting pool was long gone. Everyone assumed Tate had moved on. And as far as they knew, Noah had been left behind years ago. Susie had a suspicion that there had been something physical between Tate and Noah, but she had no proof. She had noticed too many little things over the years: the awkward silences, the sudden changes in their behavior, and the way both men seemed to become guarded whenever the other was mentioned. Still, Susie couldn't say for certain what had happened. None of the other three had a clue. As far as they were concerned, Tate and Noah were simply on good speaking terms. They assumed whatever history existed between them was nothing more than an unusually complicated companionship. Susie kept her suspicions to herself. She wasn't about to accuse either of them of something she couldn't prove. Bree slowly picked up the cake again, holding it like it might start arguments on its own. Anna cleared her throat softly. So, do we still want chocolate ganache, or are we emotionally switching to something simpler? No one answered right away. Because for Noah, the wedding planning wasn't the thing occupying the room anymore. And everyone could feel that the conversation had already moved somewhere none of them had actually agreed to go. The room didn't recover. Not really. It tried to. Bree carefully repositioned the cake. Anna went back to pretending the seating chart mattered. Someone even reopened a binder like paper could restore order, but the air had already shifted into something denser, harder to ignore. And then people started talking again. At first it was cautious, almost polite. So, Bree said slowly, glancing between Noah and Susie, is this like an X situation or a we're not supposed to ask questions situation? Anna shot her a look immediately. That is the same situation phrased two different ways. Bree shrugged. I'm trying to understand the genre. Noah didn't answer. That silence was enough for everyone else to keep going. Susie pinched the bridge of her nose. We are not doing this right now. But the room had already decided it was doing it. Because once the name Tate had been spoken, it stopped being background context. It became a subject. Bree leaned forward slightly. Okay, I just need clarity because I feel like I missed a season of this show. Were you two together or not? Anna added carefully, or is it one of those situations where nobody agrees on what together means? Noah finally spoke, voice flat. We were not together. That didn't end it. It made it worse. Bree blinked. Okay, but like, emotionally. Susie shot her a look. Bree. What? Bree defended. I'm asking for narrative consistency. Anna sighed. We are not doing narrative consistency at a cake tasting. But the questions were already spilling out now. Not just from Bree. From Anna too, softer but still curious. Was he your ex? Anna asked carefully. Noah shook his head once. No. Bree frowned. Then what was he? That question hung longer than the others. Noah didn't answer immediately. Susie stepped in quickly. He's someone from his past, that's all you need to know. But that only made it worse again. Because someone from the past meant everything and nothing at the same time. Bree leaned back, exhaling dramatically. Okay, I'm sorry, but that is extremely vague and therefore extremely suspicious. Noah gave a short, humorless laugh under his breath. Yeah, he said quietly, that's kind of the point. Silence flickered. Anna frowned slightly. Noah, are people saying things about him? That question landed differently. Noah looked up at her. Not defensive. Just tired. People always say things, he said. Bree tilted her head, but like what kind of things? Susie cut in sharply. We are not feeding gossip. But the word had already been introduced. And once it was in the room, it multiplied. Bree shifted uncomfortably. Okay, that came out heavier than I intended my cake question to go. Anna exhaled slowly. We might be in emotional ambush territory. Susie looked at Noah now more serious. Noah, stop. But Noah didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I'm not spiraling, he said. I'm just realizing that every time his name comes up, everyone in this room reacts like there's history I'm not fully holding. That hit the room harder than any accusation. Because it wasn't wrong. Bree opened her mouth, then closed it again. Anna looked down at the binder. Susie's jaw tightened. Noah stood up slowly, stepping away from the couch now. I'm getting asked questions I can't answer, he said quietly, and I don't even know what the answers are supposed to be anymore. Bree finally spoke again, softer this time. Noah, I think people are just reacting because it seems like something complicated happened and nobody knows the rules of it. Anna nodded. Yeah, that's accurate. Susie rubbed her forehead. This is exactly why I didn't want this to turn into this. Noah looked at her. I didn't turn it into anything, he said. You answered a call, said his name, and now I'm the one getting interrogated in my own living room. The room went quiet again. Bree glanced at Anna. We should have just stuck with fondant. Anna whispered back, we still can, emotionally we cannot. Noah exhaled, looking between all of them now. And for the first time, the wedding planning on the table didn't feel like planning anymore. It felt like it was sitting on top of something no one had actually opened yet, and everyone was now realizing it had weight. Noah kept flipping through the wedding cake book. Page after page, frosting styles, tiered structures, sugar flowers that suddenly felt absurdly irrelevant. He didn't look up. That was the only thing in the room that felt controlled anymore. Anna tapped his shoulder lightly. Noah, she said a little too casually. Noah paused, slowly looked up. Anna hesitated for half a second, just long enough that everyone could tell she knew she probably shouldn't ask what she was about to ask. Then she said it anyway. What was he like with you? The room cracked open. Susie immediately straightened. Anna, don't. Jack made a choking sound from his drink, setting his cup down too fast. Why would you phrase it like that? Bree, on the other hand, leaned in slightly like she'd been waiting for the question the entire time. No, I'm sorry, Bree said, hands up. That's actually been the elephant in the room since, like, years ago. Everyone here knows of him, nobody really knows who he is when he's alone. Susie's voice sharpened. This is not an appropriate conversation for a wedding planning session. Bree shrugged. It already stopped being a normal wedding planning session the second the cake got emotional. Anna winced slightly. That's not what I meant. Noah finally closed the cake book. Not slammed. Just closed. Carefully. The sound still felt loud. He looked at Anna first. Then Bree. Then briefly at Jack. And finally Susie. His expression wasn't angry. It was something more contained than that. Tired, alert, like he was trying to understand what version of him they were all talking to. I'm not answering that, Noah said quietly. Bree frowned. Why not? Noah didn't react to the question immediately. Then softly. Because you're not asking me about him, he said. You're asking me to perform an explanation that makes everyone else comfortable with something they don't understand. That landed. Even Bree went quiet for a beat. Anna lowered her eyes slightly. That wasn't my intention. Noah nodded once. I believe that. Then added quieter. But it's still what it turns into. Susie stepped in immediately, voice firm now. Okay, that's enough. We are not dissecting Noah's personal history like it's entertainment. Bree leaned back. I'm not trying to entertain myself. I'm trying to understand why every time his name comes up, everyone reacts like it's a loaded gun sitting in the middle of the room. Jack muttered, we are way past cake at this point. Noah exhaled slowly. I don't know what you all think happened, he said, and I don't think I'm supposed to be learning about it through questions like this. Anna softened. Noah, we're not trying to corner you. But Noah shook his head slightly. Then don't ask me things that feel like I'm supposed to defend or explain a relationship I don't fully have words for, he said. Silence again. Susie looked between them all, visibly frustrated now. This is exactly why I said we shouldn't bring his name into today, she said under her breath. Bree tilted her head. It wasn't exactly avoidable. Jack added quietly. At this point, it kind of walked into the room and sat down. Noah looked down at the cake book again. But he didn't open it. And for the first time since the conversation started, the room seemed to collectively realize something uncomfortable. They weren't actually talking about Tate anymore. They were talking around Noah. And he was the only one still trying to hold the center of it. Anna blinked, cutting straight through the chaos. Have you fucked Tate, Noah? Noah choked on his tea. He actually coughed hard, setting the cup down too fast as it clattered against the table. His eyes snapped up. Noah dragged a hand down his face. I said I don't want to talk about it. Anna ignored him completely, practically vibrating with disbelief. Do you know how many people would lose their minds over that? Tate Blue fucking you? That's insane. Noah's jaw clenched harder. It's not like that. Bree leaned forward, grinning now in that way that made everything worse. Okay, but come on, he's wealthy, he's attractive, he's literally the guy everyone talks about. I bet he's, she lowered her voice dramatically, good in bed. I'm not hearing this, Noah snapped instantly, sitting up straighter. Anna gasped, delighted. So he is. No, Noah said again, sharper, we are not doing this. But the damage was done. Bree and Anna were already exchanging looks as they'd just unlocked a piece of gossip they were absolutely not going to let go of. Anna looked like she physically could not contain herself anymore. Oh my God, have you two even, she repeated, then lowered her voice like it made it less obvious. You know, fucked yet. Noah's head snapped toward her instantly. None of your business. Bree choked on her drink, half laughing, half horrified. Anna. What? Anna threw her hands up. It's a valid question. Noah pushed his chair back slightly, visibly done. We are not doing this. Anna, completely ignoring him, leaned forward again. Okay, fine, different question. Are you the top or the bottom? Silence dropped like a stone. Noah stared at her for a long second, expression flat in a way that made it clear the conversation had crossed multiple lines at once. Tate and I don't speak to each other anymore. We are not talking about any of that. Bree finally stepped in, waving her hands. Anna, stop, you're making it weird. I'm not making it weird, Anna insisted. It's already weird, he's Tate Blue, everyone knows him. Noah exhaled sharply, rubbing his forehead. The energy in the room had gone from gossip to full-on chaos in under a minute. No, he said firmly, cutting through it. We are not talking about Tate, we are not talking about rumors, we are not talking about sex, we are not talking about any of this at all. Anna opened her mouth again, but Noah lifted a hand. And before anyone says anything else, his voice sharpened just enough to stop her, we're planning Riley's wedding. Not gossiping about my non-existent relationship with Tate Blue, not talking about other men, and definitely not turning it into a rumor mill. Bree blinked. Okay, fair. Anna slumped back in her chair dramatically. You're no fun. I'm not trying to be fun, Noah shot back. I'm trying to have one normal conversation without it turning into this. A beat of silence followed. Then Bree, softer now, tried to smooth it over. All right, you're right, wedding stuff only, no distractions. Noah nodded once. Good. Anna sighed loudly. Fine, but I'm still saying Tate Blue sniffing around you is news and nobody is telling us. That's insane. Nope, Noah cut in immediately. Anna frowned. What? No more use of the T word, he said flatly. Bree blinked. The T word. Noah didn't even hesitate. Tate. Anna groaned. That's ridiculous. No, Noah said, gathering himself again, calmer but firm. That's boundaries. For a moment, they both looked like they might argue again. Then Bree finally leaned back, conceding with a small nod. Okay, no Tate talk. Anna crossed her arms. Fine, but this is the most boring wedding planning ever. Noah picked up his tea again, slower this time. Good, he said quietly, it's supposed to be. Noah exhaled like something in him had finally snapped from exhaustion rather than anger. Anna, of course, didn't take the hint. I heard something from Chloe, she said, way too casually, like she was discussing the weather. Noah, don't freak out. Noah stopped cutting the ribbon on the table. The scissors paused midair. Then he slowly set them down. His head dropped into his hands. "Please don't," he muttered. Because he already knew where this was going. Bree leaned in slightly. "What did Chloe say?" Anna brightened immediately like she'd been waiting for permission. "Okay, so apparently she found last year a letter in Tate's things about another woman, and she was served annulment papers a month after Terrence died, which means," she widened her eyes dramatically, "Tate is basically not married anymore." A beat of silence. Susie, who had been hovering in the corner, visibly grimaced. "That's messy." Noah didn't even look up. "That's not shocking." Anna blinked. "It's not." "No," Noah said flatly into his hands. "The second anything serious happens in his life, he runs in the opposite direction." Anna tilted her head. "So, you did know him well after his wedding?" Noah finally lifted his head just enough to look at her. "We are not doing this." Bree glanced between them, sensing the tension spike again. "Wait, so he's single now?" Noah immediately shut it down. "No." Anna frowned. "That's not what she just said." Noah pointed slightly like he was drawing a line in the air. "We are not talking about Tate. We are not talking about Chloe. We are not talking about divorces, annulments, letters, or whatever dramatic rumor just got passed around." Anna leaned back dramatically in her chair. "You're no fun." "I'm not trying to be fun," Noah said tiredly. "I'm trying to survive this conversation." Bree, however, couldn't resist. "Okay, but hypothetically," she said, "if he is actually single, that changes things. He's still Tate Blue, he's still—" Noah cut in instantly. "No." Anna ignored him completely, now fully spiraling into her own imagination. "I mean, come on, Tate Blue would be an amazing husband. He's a good provider, he's stable financially, he's got a big you-know-what, he's amazing in bed, he's, what, emotionally intense, sure, but people can work with that." Noah stared at her, deadpan. "You're describing a stock portfolio, not a person." Anna waved a hand. "Details." Bree laughed under her breath. "She's not wrong about the money part, though." Noah leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face again. "This is exactly why I didn't want anyone talking about him." Anna pointed at him suddenly. "See, that's the problem, you're acting like he's some forbidden topic." "It's not forbidden," Noah said, sharper now. "It's just not relevant to Riley's wedding planning, which is what we're supposed to be doing." Silence flickered again. Then Anna, softer but still nosy. "Okay, but hypothetically again, he's been sniffing around you and sleeping nude on top of you in bed for years, right?" Noah's jaw tightened. Bree froze. "Anna." Noah stared at her for a long moment. Then he slowly pushed his chair back. "No," he said firmly, standing up, "we're done." Anna blinked. "Done with what?" Noah grabbed the ribbon and scissors and shoved them aside. "Done with this conversation, done with rumors, done with the T word, done with the C word, done with all of it." Bree held up her hands. "Okay, okay." Anna sighed dramatically. "You're literally banning vocabulary now." "Yes," Noah said flat, "because you can't be trusted with it." That finally shut her up, at least for a few seconds. But even as Noah turned back toward the table, it was obvious. Anna was already thinking of the next rumor she was about to bring up. Anna leaned back in her chair, as if she had just delivered the final piece of a puzzle. "And anyway," she added brightly, as if the conversation had never been shut down, "everyone in town is wondering who Jay is." Noah paused mid-motion. That name landed differently. Anna kept going, oblivious. "You know the girl in the letter Chloe found, that whole thing, apparently Chloe was convinced there was someone else involved, some J person. But then Tate apparently snapped, threw her out of his house and served her annulment papers right after." Andrew choked on his iced tea. Bree's eyebrows shot up. "He threw her out." "According to Chloe," Anna said with a shrug. "And now she's telling everyone it was because of Jay." The room went quiet for half a second too long. Noah slowly sat back down. Not because he wanted to. Because he didn't trust himself standing. "Jay," he repeated flat. Anna nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, Jay, nobody knows who she is. Some people think it's a business partner, some people think it's fake, some people think like code for someone else." Bree tilted her head. "That sounds like a mess." "It is a mess," Anna said, clearly enjoying it. "And the funniest part is Chloe swears she saw proof, like letters, messages, something, but Tate just shut it all down and kicked her out." Susie, still quiet in the corner, muttered, "That's extreme." Noah didn't respond immediately. His fingers tapped once against the edge of the table. Then again. Jay. It shouldn't have meant anything. It was just a name. But it still hooked into something under his ribs he didn't want to examine too closely. Anna noticed his silence and grinned slightly. "You're thinking about it too, aren't you?" "No," Noah said too quickly. Bree's eyes narrowed a little. "That was fast." Noah exhaled through his nose. "We are not doing this again." Anna sighed dramatically. "You're so boring now." "I'm consistent," Noah corrected. But his voice didn't land as firmly as before. Because the problem wasn't Anna anymore. It was the thought he couldn't quite stop forming. Jay. Whoever that was. And why, against every boundary he'd set for himself, he felt even a flicker of something sharp and unwelcome tighten in his chest when he heard it. Noah pushed the feeling down immediately. He had Riley's wedding. That was the point. That was the plan. He wasn't allowed to care about anything else. Especially not a name and a rumor he shouldn't even be listening to. Andrew leaned back in his chair, trying to look unaffected while the conversation around the table spiraled deeper into speculation. Anna crossed her arms. "I'm telling you, Jay has to be a woman. There's no way Tate acts that secretive over just some friend." "Exactly," someone added. "The way he talks about Jay, that's relationship-level secrecy." Another voice chimed in. "Maybe she's famous. Or married. Or dangerous." The group laughed. Andrew didn't. He rubbed a hand across his mouth, eyes fixed on the table like he suddenly regretted sitting down at all. Noah noticed immediately. Andrew looked trapped. The room had gone completely silent around him. Andrew muttered, "You people have been assuming a lot." Noah kept watching Andrew though, noticing the part nobody else did. Andrew wasn't shocked by the name. He was nervous about it. And suddenly Noah realized that knowing who Jay was might be a much bigger problem than everyone thought. Anna ignored him completely. "No, seriously, how has nobody met Jay? Tate acts like she's classified information." Andrew repeated before he could stop himself. The group noticed immediately. Anna pointed at him. "Interesting reaction." Andrew grabbed a drink off the table. "Not a reaction." "It absolutely was," Noah said, watching him carefully now. Jack leaned in. "Tate never talks about Jay, ever. Every time someone asks, he changes the subject." "Which obviously means it's serious," Anna added. "Honestly, at this point I'm imagining some glamorous woman with a fake name. Maybe she's famous. Maybe she's married. Maybe Tate stole her from a royal family." The table burst into laughter. Andrew didn't laugh. Instead, he stared down into his glass, shoulders suddenly tense. All of Noah's friends were talking about Tate's stalker like he was a commodity or a secret lover or something. Noah noticed that again too. His smile faded slightly as he looked at Andrew more closely. "Do you know who Jay is?" Andrew looked up immediately. "What's no?" "That wasn't convincing at all," Anna said. "You reacted the second she said she," Noah added quietly. For a moment, Andrew said nothing. And that silence was loud. Andrew rubbed a hand over his face. "You guys built an entire fantasy out of literally nothing." Anna looked delighted. This just got way more interesting. But Noah wasn't focused on that anymore. He was watching Andrew. Because Andrew didn't look amused or surprised. He looked sick to his stomach and pushed his slice of cake away from his dining setting. And that meant knowing Jay was probably a bigger deal than anyone at this party realized. The knock at the door cut through the tension like a clean break. Anna was the first to move, practically springing up from her chair. "Oh, wedding people," she said, smoothing her shirt like she hadn't just been interrogating Noah about half the town's gossip network. She opened the door. A man stood on the other side with a clipboard tucked under one arm and a rolled fabric sample in the other. Behind him, a second worker carried a box of flowers wrapped in breathable mesh. "Hi," Anna said brightly, "you're early." "Traffic was better than expected," the man replied politely. His eyes scanned the room quickly, professionally, and practiced. Noah looked up from the table. Something in his expression shifted. Recognition. Not immediate familiarity, but the kind that clicks into place a second too late. Noah frowned slightly. "Wait. The man's gaze flicked to him. For a fraction of a second, something tightened in his face. Noah leaned forward a bit, studying him now. You were at Uncle Joey's funeral. Andrew's gaze landed on the florist. The room went quiet. Anna blinked. You know him, Noah. The man hesitated just long enough to be noticeable, then gave a small nod. Yes, I worked as the gardener. I helped with flower and burial arrangements. Bree glanced between them, suddenly more alert. Who is he? The man adjusted the strap of his bag as if grounding himself. Dennis. When I'm not assembling flowers for events, I work part-time as a gardener at the cemetery. Then after a pause he added, I also do floristry work. My mother was a florist, I learned from her. Anna's face lit up instantly, seeing his arrangements hanging on his arm. Oh my God, that's perfect. That's literally perfect for a wedding. Dennis gave a small, polite smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Noah was still watching him. Not suspiciously. Carefully. Like he was trying to place why something about Dennis felt off. Anna, oblivious as always, clapped her hands once. Okay, Dennis, great, perfect timing. We're literally going over floral themes. Come in, come in. Dennis stepped inside, setting the box down near the table. The scent of fresh greenery followed him in, grounding the room for a moment. But Noah didn't relax. He stayed seated, eyes tracking Dennis as he moved. Anna continued talking. So we're thinking something light, romantic, maybe soft white with green accents. Riley doesn't want anything too dramatic. Dennis nodded, opening his clipboard. I understand, minimalist elegance is usually the safest direction for that. Bree leaned on the table. Have you done a lot of weddings in LA? Dennis gave a small shrug. Yes, I've been to every house in Los Angeles. Anna laughed. That's such a weird way to say it. It's accurate, Dennis replied simply. Then he looked up. Just briefly. And his eyes landed on Noah again. Something in the air shifted. Noah noticed it immediately. So, Noah said casually, too casually, if you've been to a lot of houses, you probably know a lot of people. Dennis didn't react right away. Then he closed his clipboard slowly. I meet many clients, he said evenly. Anna tilted her head. Okay, so like you must hear things, right? Celebrities, wealthy people, gossip, LA stuff. Dennis gave a polite smile that felt more controlled than warm. I don't pay attention to gossip. Bree smirked slightly. Nobody in LA says that and means it. Dennis's smile didn't change. It's part of my job, confidentiality is important. Noah's gaze sharpened a fraction. Anna of course saw an opening and ran straight into it. Okay, but quick question, she said, lowering her voice like she was sharing secrets instead of broadcasting them. Do you know anything interesting about Tate Blue? The room went still. Even Bree paused. Dennis didn't move immediately. But something in his expression tightened, subtle, controlled, like a door being carefully shut from the inside. Noah noticed it instantly. Anna, oblivious, kept going. You've probably been to his home, right? Everyone says he's kind of a mystery, but also like extremely. Anna, Bree warned under her breath. Dennis raised a hand slightly. Not aggressively, just enough to stop the conversation. I don't know anything weird about Mr. Blue, he said calmly. A beat. Then he added, firmer now, and even if I did, I wouldn't be able to say. Anna blinked. Dennis was arranging the flowers with careful precision when Anna, still unsatisfied, leaned forward again. Okay, but come on, she pressed. You've definitely at least met him, Tate Blue. Everyone in LA has some kind of story. Dennis didn't look up. Then almost casually, too casually, he said, he's the freakiest person in Los Angeles. The room went dead silent. Bree actually stopped mid-breath. Excuse me. Anna's eyes widened as she'd just been handed forbidden information. Wait, what do you mean freakiest? Dennis continued adjusting a stem, unbothered. That's just the reputation. Noah straightened slightly in his chair. Reputation based on what? Dennis finally looked up. And for a second, something unreadable passed behind his eyes, something like a warning or a memory or both. Then it vanished. I don't explain clients, he said evenly. Anna nearly jumped out of her seat. No, you can't say something like that and just stop. What does that even mean? Like party freaky, weird freaky, rich people freaky? Bree laughed nervously. Anna stopped digging. But Anna was already spiraling. Because I've heard rumors, but that's like next level. Freakiest person in LA is insane. Noah didn't speak, but his jaw tightened. He watched Dennis closely now. Dennis, meanwhile, continued working like nothing had happened, placing flowers into a vase with slow, deliberate care. I don't engage in rumors, Dennis said again, calm as ever. I said what I said. Anna stared at him. That's not an explanation. It wasn't meant to be, Dennis replied. Silence fell again. But this time it didn't feel like gossip. It felt like something had been dropped into the room that nobody knew how to pick back up. Noah finally leaned back, exhaling through his nose. Right, he said quietly, so we're all just going to ignore that statement and move on. Anna immediately shook her head. Absolutely not. Bree groaned. Anna. But Anna was already locked in. No, I need to know what kind of freaky we're talking about. Dennis didn't react. Not a flicker. Just continued arranging flowers like he hadn't just detonated the entire room with one sentence. Anna wasn't done. She leaned forward again, eyes locked on Dennis like she was trying to peel the truth out of him by force of curiosity alone. Okay, she said, softer now but still intense. Is there anything you can say that isn't covered under confidentiality? Bree immediately groaned. Anna, stop, he already said. No, wait, Anna insisted. I just want a general idea, like vibe-wise, no names, no specifics, just what is that even supposed to mean? Dennis paused. For the first time since he walked in, he stopped arranging the flowers entirely. The room felt like it tightened around him. Noah watched him carefully. Dennis slowly set down the stem he was holding. His expression stayed controlled, professional, but something behind it shifted, like a line had already been crossed in his mind and he was deciding how much of it to acknowledge. Then he exhaled once. I can't give you details, he said flatly. Anna opened her mouth. But Dennis continued, cutting her off. All I know, based on what I saw with my own eyes, he added, voice colder now, is that Tate Blue is one of the most disgusting, perverted, and unnatural individuals I've ever encountered. The room went still. Bree's eyebrows shot up. Wow. Anna's eyes widened. Okay, what does that even mean? Dennis didn't soften it. He didn't elaborate either. He just shook his head once, as if refusing to unpack it any further. What he's into, Dennis said after a pause, carefully choosing his words, is not something I would ever repeat in polite circles, not in this house, not anywhere. Silence dropped hard this time. Noah's expression changed, subtle but immediate. Not shock exactly. More like a tightening awareness, the kind that comes when a name you've been trying not to think about gets painted in something darker than rumor. Anna, meanwhile, looked like she'd been handed the most explosive piece of gossip in the city and told not to open it. You're serious, she whispered. Dennis nodded once. Yes. Bree leaned back slowly, suddenly less amused. Okay, that's actually kind of concerning. Noah finally spoke, voice low. You don't usually talk about clients like that. Dennis met his eyes. A long beat passed between them. I don't, Dennis said evenly. That's why I'm not saying anything else. Anna sank back into her chair, stunned but still visibly processing every word. So when you said freakiest person in LA, she murmured. Dennis didn't answer. He simply went back to arranging the flowers, movements precise again, as he had already closed the door on the conversation. But the damage was done. Because now the room didn't feel like gossip anymore. It felt like everyone had just heard something they weren't supposed to know. And no one knew what to do with it next. Dennis didn't move for a moment. Andrew didn't look well. The flowers sat half-arranged in the vase, stems uneven, water catching the light near the table. The room felt tighter than before, like everyone was waiting for him to either explain himself or take it back. He didn't do either. All I will say, Dennis added finally, voice level but edged now in a way it hadn't been earlier, is that there is nowhere and no one that man whore deviant won't have sex with, and that's all I'm going to say about it. Bree blinked. What does that even mean? Anna's mouth actually fell open a little. No way. Noah's chair creaked as he shifted forward, his expression sharpening. That's not, what are you even basing that on? Dennis didn't look at the others. His eyes went straight to Noah. Not the group. Not the room. Just Noah. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. But the way he held the gaze was unsettling, too steady, too knowing, like he was placing something in Noah's hands without anyone else noticing. For a second, the conversation dropped out of the room completely. Anna stopped smiling. Bree stopped speaking. Even Susie in the corner looked uneasy. Dennis tilted his head slightly, still looking at Noah. Andrew stared at his own watch. That man, Dennis said quietly, is disgusting and an offender of the worst kind. Stay away from him if you don't want to be damaged. A beat. Then he turned away as if nothing else mattered, picked up his tools, and began packing them with slow, deliberate efficiency. Noah didn't break eye contact immediately. But his jaw tightened. Because Dennis hadn't just said it like gossip. He'd said it like experience. Like something remembered. Anna finally found her voice again, but it came out thinner this time. Okay, that's actually insane. Bree shook her head slightly. This is getting weird. Noah stood up. That's enough. Dennis didn't respond. He zipped his bag shut, placed the flower box carefully against the wall, and walked toward the door. Anna watched him go, whispering under her breath like she couldn't help herself. I swear, LA is just one big rumor engine. Bree muttered, yeah, and we're standing right in the middle of it. Dennis paused at the doorway. For half a second he glanced back. And the look he gave Noah again wasn't curiosity. It wasn't friendliness. It was something colder, like a warning that didn't need words. Then he left. The door clicked shut behind him. Silence settled in immediately, heavier than before. Anna broke it first, of course. Okay, so obviously that's just rumors, right? Like exaggerated gossip. No one answered right away. Because now it didn't feel like normal gossip anymore. It felt like something that had been circulating through the city for a long time, getting louder every time it was passed from person to person, changing shape, growing sharper, losing anything that made it feel harmless. Noah sat back down slowly. His voice was quiet when he finally spoke. Yeah, he said, rumors. But his eyes stayed fixed on the door Dennis had just closed. And for the first time all day, he didn't sound convinced. Dennis came back about 10 minutes later. No apology, no explanation. Just the quiet sound of the door opening again as he stepped in with a few more floral baskets balanced carefully in his arms, as if the earlier conversation had never happened at all. Anna, however, had clearly been sitting on the edge of exploding the entire time. She turned immediately. Okay, wait, one more question. Bree groaned under her breath. Anna, don't. But Anna was already leaning forward, eyes locked on Dennis as she had finally worked up the courage to push past every boundary in the room. Where did you see Tate having sex? The air in the room dropped. Even Susie looked like she wanted to disappear into the wall. Noah's head snapped up. Anna. But Dennis didn't react right away. He paused mid-step. Slowly he set one basket down. Then another. The silence stretched until it felt physically uncomfortable. Finally Dennis turned toward her. His expression was flat again, controlled, unreadable, but there was something in it now that felt sharper than before, like irritation had finally replaced patience. What exactly are you talking about? He asked calmly. Anna nodded quickly. Yes, like where, with whom, you said. Dennis cut her off without raising his voice. With whom was Tate having sex with when I caught him trespassing? He repeated almost clinically. Anna swallowed. Yes. A beat. Bree muttered, this is going to be good. Dennis tilted his head slightly, as if considering whether to answer at all. Then he said, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. Then his eyes met Andrew's. Andrew choked on his own spit. Anna immediately leaned forward. Try me. That did it. A faint smirk flickered across Dennis's face, not warm, not amused in any friendly way, more like disbelief at the entire situation. Tate Blue, he said quietly, is a narcissist. Noah exhaled sharply. We've established that. But Dennis continued. I saw him doing things with people you wouldn't even guess. Anna's eyes widened. Who? Dennis didn't answer. Instead, he shifted the basket in his hands, readying himself to leave again. And where? Anna pressed, nearly standing now. This time Dennis finally looked directly at her. A long heavy stare. Then he said, "You really don't want to know." Anna's voice dropped, "I do." Dennis let out a small, almost dismissive breath. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," he repeated. Then more quietly, almost like a final warning. "And I don't recommend to anyone to ever shake his hand. Tate only loves and fucks himself. He's like a mirror that's infatuated with itself. There's nothing right about that man. He's unable to love appropriate people or fuck living, breathing people." That landed differently. Even Bree stopped smiling. Noah's expression tightened again, but now it wasn't curiosity. It was something more controlled, more guarded. Anna whispered, "What does that even mean?" Dennis had already turned away. "No further comments," he said. He walked to the door, baskets in hand, like he was simply finishing a work shift rather than dropping something explosive into their afternoon. At the threshold, he paused just long enough to add, "That man is a criminal in ways people will never understand." Then he left. The door shut, and the room stayed frozen for a long moment. Anna slowly sank back into her chair. "Okay." Bree rubbed her forehead. "I regret every question you asked." Susie muttered, "I regret being here." Noah didn't speak immediately. His eyes stayed on the door. Because now it wasn't just gossip anymore. It was a pattern. Rumors stacking on rumors, each person adding something darker than the last. And whether any of it was true or not, it was starting to feel like something the whole city already believed, even if nobody could agree on why. Anna didn't even wait for the door to fully close before she turned back around, eyes still wide with leftover excitement. "So," she said quickly, like she was picking up a thread that refused to drop, "what he said about Tate Blue." Noah let out a sharp breath and set the scissors down again, a little harder than necessary. "No," he said immediately, "we are not doing this." Anna ignored him completely. "But you heard it right, church, cemetery, that's not normal gossip, people don't just—" Bree cut in, warning in her tone. "What?" Anna threw her hands up. "I'm just saying, that's insane. That's not he's rich and mysterious gossip, that's like specific." Susie shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "It also sounds made up or exaggerated." Noah rubbed his face with both hands now, dragging them down slowly like he was trying to physically reset his patience. "This is exactly how rumors start," he said flatly. "Someone says something vague, people fill in the blanks, and suddenly it turns into a story no one can prove." Anna leaned forward again, undeterred. "But why would it be that specific? Who makes up cemetery rumors for fun?" Bree gave her a look. "You'd be surprised what people make up in LA." Susie nodded. "I've heard worse at brunch," Anna huffed. "Still, it's Tate Blue, people don't just randomly pick him for weird rumors." Noah dropped his hands and looked at her directly. Noah noticed Andrew suddenly stand up and head outside. Through the window, Noah could see Andrew walk over to Dennis, who was already standing nearby. The two began talking, and almost immediately everyone in the group turned their attention toward them. Dennis raised a finger and pointed it directly at Andrew. Even from inside, it was obvious that the conversation had become heated. Andrew remained composed, but his posture had grown rigid, and Dennis's gestures became increasingly animated. Nobody inside said a word. A few minutes later, Andrew came back inside. He walked over to the couch and sat down. The room went strangely quiet. Everyone was staring at him, waiting for an explanation. Andrew looked at Noah. "I was just seeing if Dennis needed any help. He told me to fuck off." Anna and Jack laughed while Bree kept talking about her suspicions. "Tate is in the deep end of the rumor mill this week." Noah groaned. "That's exactly why they do," he said, "because he's rich, private, and people are bored." A brief silence followed. Then Bree tilted her head. "Okay, but you have to admit, his name keeps coming up in weird contexts." "No," Noah said quickly, "I don't have to admit anything. I don't want to hear anything." Anna sighed dramatically and leaned back. "You're so boring when you're trying to be responsible." "I'm not being responsible," Noah replied. "I'm being sane." Susie let out a small, uneasy laugh. "Honestly, I think I prefer not knowing anything about any of this." Bree nodded, "Same." Anna, however, wasn't done. Because now the idea had already lodged itself. Okay, she said slowly, but if it's just rumors, why does everyone say his name like that, like there's always something behind it? Noah stared at her for a long second. Then he picked up the scissors again. Because people like stories, he said simply, that's it. He went back to the ribbon cutting. Cleaner. Sharper. Like he was trying to cut the conversation out of the room entirely. Anna still looked unconvinced, but for once she didn't push further. Not because she believed him, but because she already had enough pieces in her head to keep the rumor going on her own. Later that night, the house was quiet in that heavy, uneven way it gets when everyone else has finally gone home, and the silence felt louder than the day. Noah had just managed to drift off when he heard it. A faint sound first, drawers shifting, a soft clink of glass, the refrigerator door opened. He froze. For a few seconds he told himself it was nothing, the wind, the pipes, something normal. Then he heard the fridge close again. Noah sat up. Slowly. He swung his legs out of bed, grabbed the nearest thing within reach, a baseball bat that definitely did not belong in his bedroom, and moved down the hallway in complete silence. The kitchen light was off. Another rustle. Noah reached the doorway, raised the bat slightly, and flicked the light switch on. Hey, he shouted. The light flooded the kitchen. And there, completely unbothered, standing barefoot in front of the open refrigerator with a bottle of something in hand, was Tate Blue. Noah blinked. Tate blinked back. Then casually, "Oh my God, you scared me." Noah lowered the bat slightly, still tense. "I thought you were a burglar." Tate glanced down at the bat. "I don't know any burglars who would break into someone's house and immediately go for their fridge." Noah stared at him. "It's 2 in the morning." Tate shrugged like that explained everything. "I was hungry." Noah rubbed his face with his free hand. "Why are you even here?" Tate shut the fridge with his foot and leaned against the counter. "Long night." "That is not an answer." Tate's eyes flicked to the bat again. "You can put that down." "No," Noah said immediately. Tate sighed like Noah was being difficult on purpose. "Fine, keep it, very dramatic of you." Noah stepped further into the kitchen, still not relaxing. "What do you want?" Tate didn't answer right away. Instead, he grabbed something from the counter and took a bite as if he belonged there. Noah's patience visibly shortened. "Stop acting like this is normal," Noah said. Tate swallowed. "It is normal for me." "That's not comforting." A pause. Then, more casually than anything Noah expected, Tate added, "I've had a very interesting day." Noah narrowed his eyes. "Define interesting." Tate leaned back against the counter, watching him now. "I got approached about marriage proposals I didn't make, I got dragged through rumors I didn't start, and I had to listen to my entire life being discussed like it's a reality show." Noah's grip tightened slightly on the bat. "That sounds like your problem." Tate smiled faintly. "It is." Silence stretched between them. Then Noah, more tired than angry now, said, "Why are you really here?" Tate pushed off the counter and took a slow step closer. Noah didn't move. The space between them tightened instantly, not loud, not dramatic, but loaded in a way that made the air feel different. Tate's voice dropped a little. "I was cold and thought you could warm me up tonight." Noah's expression shifted. "Of course you did." Tate's eyes held his. "You in my bed is a habit I don't want to break, Noah." That landed differently. Noah didn't respond immediately. Instead, he steadied himself. "I'm still engaged." Tate's jaw tightened slightly at that. "Yeah," Tate said after a beat, "I heard." Another pause. "Congrats," Noah said, "on your annulment and for not telling me." Noah looked at him. Tate shrugged slightly. "It was up to Chloe when she wanted to release the information. I gave my word I wouldn't tell anyone until she released the information publicly to her social group. I assume she did, or else you wouldn't know about it." Tate stepped closer, not touching Noah yet, but close enough that Noah instinctively felt it. "Are you actually sleeping with him?" Tate asked, quieter now. "Is that thief in your bed right now sleeping on my side?" Noah let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "You break into my kitchen at 2 in the morning to ask me that." "I didn't break in," Tate corrected. "You left the door unlocked." "That's not the point." Tate's gaze didn't move. "Answer me." Noah's expression hardened. "Yes," he said simply. "Sometimes he's my fiancé." The word fiancé changed the air again. Tate went still. For a fraction of a second, something sharp flickered across his face, jealousy, irritation, something older than both. Then he moved. Quickly. He closed the distance and pressed Noah back against the wall, firm, not rough, but immediate enough to stop the conversation dead in its tracks. Noah didn't drop the bat, but his posture stiffened. Tate. Tate held his gaze, close, unblinking. "Are you saying that to annoy me?" he asked quietly. Noah didn't flinch. "I'm saying it because it's true." A beat. Then Noah added, colder now, "He's my fiancé. Of course I sleep with him sometimes." That sentence hung there. Tate didn't look away. The silence stretched, tight and charged, until it felt like the whole kitchen had shrunk around them. Finally Tate let out a slow breath. "Right," he said quietly. But he didn't move away immediately. And neither did Noah. Noah's breath caught the second Tate pushed him to the bedroom, but he twisted free from Tate's grasp.